Would you have the courage to lie in front of God just to avoid being grilled alive, knowing your lie would change the world? Today, we reveal how a stubborn old man defied the most powerful system on earth and why you are still a slave to truths you never question.
If you stay until the end, I'll give you the key to the mental independence Galileo used to become immortal, while his enemies became mere dust in history. Want to know what he whispered on his knees that still makes the powerful tremble today? Watch and find out how to be an icon among so many mediocre people. To kick off our podcast, let's talk about this madman's mindset. Galileo wasn't just a genius, he was the king of I told you so. While everyone thought Earth was the center of the universe just because human ego is massive, he focused on what the lenses showed. He had a discipline bordering on obsession. Can you imagine going blind from staring at the sun and still thinking optimism would save your skin? He's like that friend of yours who invests everything in sketchy crypto, except Galileo actually had proof. If you want that level of resilience, I recommend reading The Starry Messenger. It's the manual on how to get canceled by the Catholic Church and still keep your purpose steady.
Honestly, Daniel, his spirituality was a total mess, wasn't it? The guy tried to reconcile the Bible with science, which is like trying to explain to your grandfather how TikTok works. It's just not happening. He had sharp self-awareness. He knew he was brilliant and made sure to rub it in the faces of the mediocre. Nowadays, people post motivational focus quotes, but Galileo lived it in a cell, under house arrest, with no Wi-Fi. His creativity wasn't just seeing planets, it was drawing what nobody wanted to see. Want a practical example? Go to the Museo Galileo in Florence and see his middle finger on display. It's the ultimate proof that he's still flipping off anyone who doubted his growth.
His middle finger being on display is the greatest shade in human history, Karen. And look at the inspiration it sparks. The guy was tried for heresy because he had too much focus on reality. In the Big Five, he'd definitely score high on openness to experience, bordering on insolence. He didn't accept it's always been this way. If you're stuck in your job because the market is tough, know that Galileo faced the Inquisition over a toy telescope he improved himself. He used the leverage of technology to change the world. Watch the documentary Galileo's Battle for the Heavens on PBS. It's a slap in the face to anyone procrastinating under the excuse of lacking resources.
But there's a B-side, right? This personal development came at a price: loneliness. The guy was so polarized that even his friends were afraid to be seen with him. He was the pure essence of high dominance in disc. He didn't just want to be right, he wanted you to admit you were an idiot for being wrong. That's what I call a shark mindset, but in an ocean full of hungry inquisitors. If you want to apply this today, start questioning the absolute truths of your niche. Don't be the person who agrees with the boss just to get a bonus. Be the person who proves the boss wrong using data, but prepare for the corporate cancellation.
Ultimately, Galileo teaches us that transformation hurts. He had to deny his truth on his knees so he wouldn't end up as a human barbecue. But he walked away whispering, "Eppur si muove," and yet it moves. That's the peak of mental independence. He left a loop open. The physical world is what it is, not what we want it to be. But did he know how to sell that idea? Because there's no point in being a genius if you end up imprisoned, right? We'll see that in the next block when we talk about how he tried and miserably failed at diplomacy. After all, what's the point of seeing the stars if you can't convince the Pope to look through the telescope? Karen, let's be real. Galileo had the charisma of a brick when it came to persuasion. The guy wrote dialogue concerning the two chief world systems and put the Pope's argument in the mouth of a character named Simplicio. Yes, simpleton. That's the peak of lacking empathy and a masterclass in how not to conduct a negotiation. He was wordy and arrogant, thinking the truth was so obvious that it didn't need friendly communication. If he lived today, he'd be that guy banned from the family WhatsApp group on day one for being the truth police.
Tell me about it, Daniel. He was the master of aggressive proactivity. Instead of using active listening to understand the church's fears, he just ran everyone over with data. He had zero spirit of collaboration. In the DISC profile, he was a D, dominant, so high he broke the chart, but his I, influence, was negative. He didn't lead people, he led facts. For those wanting to learn leadership today, Galileo is the textbook example of what not to do. Being right is useless if you have no allies. Watch the movie Galileo, 1975. You'll see how his stubbornness, though heroic, was social suicide.
Exactly. He didn't realize that politics is a game of shadows. He thought that by being an icon of intelligence, everyone should bow down. But the real world requires social enabling. If you want to be a leader at work, learn the art of the carrot and the stick. Galileo only used the stick. He could have used the encouragement of some cardinals who liked science to build a support base, but he chose sarcasm instead. Practical tip: read How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's everything Galileo ignored, and it cost him his freedom. If you can't sell your idea, it dies with you.
And here comes our controversy of the day. Speaking of convincing others, artificial intelligence versus human intelligence. Galileo had the processing power of a modern AI, but the tact of a caveman. Today, AI solves calculations, but humans convince investors. Or do they? Some people prefer cold data over the emotional manipulation of leaders. What do you prefer? A Galileo leader, arrogant but delivering absolute truth, or a charismatic leader selling you a comfortable lie? Let us know in the comments, #TeamData or #TeamCharisma.
Look, Karen, I'm going with #TeamData, but with a touch of emotional intelligence, something our Italian friend lacked entirely. His persuasion was based on "I'm better than you," which is the opposite of team empowerment. He was a one-man army. To apply this in your life, if you have an innovative project, don't go around shouting that everyone else is stupid. Build bridges, use the promotion of mutual ideas. Galileo cleared the path for science, but his own path was full of thorns because he didn't know when to shut up. And speaking of the right time, did he have any moral limits, or did science justify any betrayal? Taryn, this is where it gets real. Talking about ethics with Galileo is like walking into a minefield. The guy swore on the Bible that he didn't believe in what he knew to be true just to avoid becoming a human barbecue for the Inquisition. Many say he had weak character, but I call it strategic survival. He had the responsibility to keep the flame of science alive, even if it cost his public integrity at that moment. It's that old question: would you die for your ideals, or would you live a lie to keep producing?
Look, Daniel, I see it as a total lack of transparency with his own legacy. He backed down, but kept his work hidden, which shows that justice for him was something time would solve, not the men in robes. In the Big Five, his conscientiousness was high for data, but low for social rules. He wasn't afraid to be controversial, but when the pressure hit, he played the system's game. Today, we see plenty of influencers selling ethics courses while promoting illegal casinos. Galileo, at least, lied to save his own skin, not to deceive others for money.
But here's the provocation. Was he a coward or a genius of patience? If he had died at the stake like Giordano Bruno, perhaps his work would have been burned with him. He chose responsibility toward the future over immediate martyrdom. For those watching, think, do you maintain your integrity when your boss asks you to fix a report, or do you do what's necessary to secure your year-end bonus? Galileo shows us that character isn't a straight line. It's a juggling act between what is right and what is possible.
It's the classic, the end justifies the means, right? Very dangerous. He used selective transparency. He was a master at appearing to yield while continuing to write under the table. This requires massive emotional responsibility. If you want to apply this in practice, watch The Truman Show or read 1984 by George Orwell. They discuss exactly this conflict between individual truth and systemic oppression. Galileo was the first great system hacker. He pretended the code was corrupted while running the original program in secret.
Ultimately, the moral of the story is that historical justice is slow but sure. He died under house arrest, but today he is the father of modern science. He traded immediate recognition for an integrity that would only be validated centuries later. And speaking of time, how did this stubborn old man manage to turn all this mess into something tangible? What good was the lie if the final result was the greatest technological leap in human history? That's what we'll see in the next topic, the results that turned a heretic into an eternal legend. Karen, look at the scale of this guy's success. He died canceled, but his legacy is literally the reason we have satellites and GPS today. If he had focused only on immediate financial prosperity, he would have been just another court mathematician. But he aimed for eternal recognition. He understood that the productivity of a genius mind isn't measured by likes in the town square, but by the sustainability of its ideas through the centuries. He planted a seed that changed our global technological income forever.
Absolutely, Daniel. And let's talk about prosperity. He might not have died in a golden palace, but the multiplication of knowledge he generated is incalculable. He was the master of intellectual leverage. If you want to apply this today, stop chasing quick profits. Think about how your work creates a lasting impact. Want an example of how he won? Pope John Paul II formally apologized for condemning Galileo 350 years later. That's what I call a result that takes time to land, but when it does, it's a historical knockout.
It's the victory of mental independence over oppression. Galileo proved that truth is the best long-term investment. In the Big Five, his success came from a persistence that defies logic. If you want to see his results in practice, you don't have to go far. Just look at the sky with any cheap pair of binoculars. To dive deeper, watch the series Cosmos, both the original and Neil deGrasse Tyson's. They show how human progress was unlocked by the simple act of one man refusing to take no for an answer.
But here's the spicy reflection to wrap up: meritocracy versus inheritance. Galileo had to work twice as hard because he wasn't an heir to the church's absolute truth. He built his success from scratch with his own hands and lenses. Today, we see people born with money and the source of knowledge in their hands who don't achieve half as much. What about you? Do you think Galileo's success was pure individual effort, or was he just lucky to live in an era that needed that shock? Comment below #GeniusMerit or #historical luck.
I'm going with effort, Karen. He transformed his curiosity into an inexhaustible source of growth for humanity. He didn't just seek personal gain, he sought the victory of reason. He left the loop open for us. The universe is vast and the rules change. He was the first to understand that financial independence is good, but intellectual independence is what makes you immortal. Now the question remains, after all this, how do we convince people to watch this history lesson?
So, are you going to keep thinking the world revolves around you, or will you have the courage to look through the telescope? The moral of the story is that Galileo chose to be a traitor in the eyes of men to remain faithful to reality. What about you? What have you done to evolve your character or your results? Are you the author of your own story, or just an extra waiting for the next cancellation?
Don't procrastinate your victory. If Galileo, imprisoned and without the internet, changed the course of humanity, what is your excuse today? Comment below. Which city are you watching from? And would you be Team Data or Team Charisma? Subscribe, hit the bell, and remember you can buy Lego and other products in the link in the first comment to build your own universe.